not a normal episode.
Remake Rewind.
Thanks for listening to Remake Rewind. This is another Boners episode.
Cars.
Once again. Cars. Fast cars. Tokyo Drift. Once again, we are talking about the Fast and Furious franchise. Not too long ago, at this point, it's been a couple of months the way we have our release schedule, but in a fairly recent episode, we talked about how Fast and the Furious is just a ripoff of Point Break. We really enjoyed watching it, so we decided it was a loving ripoff, and we decided to just watch the rest of the Fast and the Furious movies and just tell you what we think about them. And I think over the weekend we decided we are going to do Hobbs vs. Shaw. We're not going to wait. We're just going to go through this entire franchise.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. I'm not saying that I'm ready to be done with these movies, but I'm kind of bummed is not even the right word. I want to watch the rest of the movies soon. You know what I mean? It just feels like it's been going on for long enough.
It has been going on. I mean, we're watching one every 2 weeks. I mean, if you really want, we could bomb through a couple of them and just record a couple episodes at once to get through it.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea and stagger the release.
Yeah,
I think
we'll talk about it.
Now that, we'll get into this, but with everything happening with Han, now that we're at that point, it feels like there's a lot of momentum to get through the other movies. Maybe not necessarily Hobbs and Shaw. Maybe a little bit, but I definitely want to get through the next two.
I feel you, dog.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Oh,
so this one, we've been talking about this movie particularly a lot, just because this is one that kind of throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing. Like, the whole franchise kind of falls apart timeline-wise because of this movie. And even after watching this movie and them retconning this to be between 6 and 7, still doesn't entirely make sense.
So I was under the impression, maybe we talked about this last time. I was under the impression that it wasn't a reveal that Han died until Fast 6, till the end credits. Yeah. So upon watching this movie, I was like, oh, so when Fast and Furious came out and we saw Han at the beginning of that movie,
that was a big deal to people who've been following the franchise.
I didn't even think about that when we watched it.
And when it was a bigger deal when he showed up again, and you commented on this, I think at the end of
he mentions Tokyo.
He mentions it that he wants to go to Tokyo, and then in Fast and the Furious 6, Giselle's like, "Hey, what about at the beginning of the movie when they were like running away from someone?" She's like, "What about Tokyo?" And he's like, "We'll get there," kind of thing. So it was very. Once they started doing it, they really kind of leaned into it and were joking about it, because every movie he's been in, they've referenced Tokyo and him getting there, but it hasn't actually got there. So the reveal that Jason Statham killed him was a big deal.
Right. But it wasn't, but it was a separate thing. Like, that wasn't that the timeline was crazy, because that we already knew that. It was that Jason Statham was involved in this.
Well, but the timeline breaks down a little bit as well. So if you look at
it makes no sense.
Movie,
yeah, let's just get out in front of that.
Yeah, and then some of the other things they even say during the movies really don't make sense. So the first movie came out in 2001. Too Fast, Too Furious was 2003. This was 2006. And then we didn't get Fast 4 until I think it was 2011. And in that movie, they mentioned it had only been 5 years. So even though it had been like 10 years of time, they're saying it had only been 5 years, which, you know what, that's fine. That happens in movies. Totally cool. But then when you look at how this movie actually functions, it doesn't really make sense. Like, it was kind of like the Letty death, like when she dies, and we got with Dom acting like Sherlock Holmes / Batman, reconstructing that scene. And then the next movie, we see another flashback of the scene, and it doesn't happen anywhere near the same way it happened in Fast and Furious. Yeah. This is kind of the same way. So I guess we'll just kind of skip to the end and then go back to the beginning. But at the end of this movie, Han dies. At the end of Fast and the Furious 6, as a mid-credit scene, we see that even though we thought that Han just got in a car accident while running away from Drift King in this one and dies, we find out that Jason Statham actually was the car that crashed into him that
Mercedes
caused
S-Class.
Right. But even that, like, it doesn't make sense. But like when you watch this movie at the end, when you see Han die, And when you watch the post-credit scene, because I went back and immediatally watched that post-credit scene, and you're like, there's no way that you wouldn't have seen Jason Statham getting out of the car.
Walking away.
He was walking away. He was within 10 feet of the car when it exploded.
Well, also, another thing this movie does just within itself, not even in terms of other movies, this guy was in the most populated area in, it's not in Hong Kong, right? It's in, it's not Hong Kong. It's not in Tokyo. It's in Japan, though. Is it in Tokyo? Shibuya?
No, this is in Tokyo.
Is
They're in
Shibuya
Tokyo proper.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the geography. I just said Hong Kong. Obviously, I'm ignorant. But another thing that happens in this movie is that they get into this huge car crash. It's like a massive explosion. This guy dies. And later that night, he's just back at his dad's house. Like, I think you would have spent a lot of time talking to some police officers who would have known that you were drifting in the middle of a crosswalk.
Well, they left. They got back in their car and left before the cops got there.
There's literally a million people standing around. I don't know, man.
But there are also criminals in vehicles that, like, most likely, I don't remember seeing any license plates for the ones that our heroes were actually driving.
I guess
and
they did
also
have that.
make a point of saying, if you can go more than 180 kilometers per hour, the police won't even bother chasing you. So that doesn't bother me that they got away from the cops.
Somebody was killed in a massive, super dangerous street race. You know what I mean? It feels like they just glossed over the fact that the police weren't involved at all.
The thing that would have really stood out, though, is the fact that the only two white people that we've seen, so one is the main character of this movie, Sean, and then Jason Statham, who plays Owen Shaw's brother. He's Deckard Shaw. All these witnesses would have seen these two white guys, and they would have been like, there were these white guys. Look for the white guy who's driving away. One of them was walking. One of them was walking out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. And you just break it down like, when you look at the angles, sure, Jason Statham was walking on the opposite side of the car that Sean was at. But still, like, he was within 10 feet of the car. Somebody would have seen that. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But whatever. Let's start from the beginning and just break this movie down from beginning to end.
I want to spend some time talking about the insane continuity of this series, but yeah.
Oh, we definitely should. And I don't know if this is... Yeah. But I'm just going to say it off the top. Like, this one I liked at the time, and I've gotten back to it a couple times, but this is the movie I've probably watched the least just because it is a standalone film.
I was under the impression that this was like... I keep on saying I'm under the impression. I thought the general consensus was that this is the worst of the series. So I had really low expectations.
Now, rewatching it.
I had really low expectations going in. I ended up enjoying it.
It's not an unenjoyable movie.
I think the lead, is it Lucas Black, is super miscast. Like, that dude sucks.
Yeah, I agree.
But the movie was like, I don't know, surprisingly good time on its own.
Well, considering
not fantastic, mind you. I'm not dying on a hill.
Happened with it, and I this week has been incredibly busy. I didn't have time to go back and look at like the production history of this particular movie, but my understanding at the time when this came out was supposed to be the Vin Diesel movie of basically what the opening of Fast and Furious was, with Han and all them and all his exploits of him being out in like the Dominican Republic and whatnot. That was what the third movie apparently was supposed to be. We had the second movie was a Brian film. The third movie was supposed to be a Dom film.
Right. But
at the time he was working on Riddick, and there was a scheduling conflict, and Universal needed to put something in there because that movie came out during that same time, like the year prior.
Now I know he agreed to do the cameo at the end of this movie to get the rights for Riddick.
Exactly.
But I thought it was before he shot it.
I just know there was a scheduling conflict.
Okay.
I thought it was Riddick. It might have been one of his others because during that time period, he was doing a lot of movies. He was doing Riddick. I can't remember. There was like another post-apocalyptic movie that he kind of did.
He did Triple X.
There was Triple X at some point. He also did, I cannot remember. It's like Babylon something or other, but it was like a post-apocalyptic film. He did Triple X. He did the Riddick movie. He also did The Pacifier. So Vin Diesel was doing a fuck ton of work at this time period. So it definitely makes sense that there was a conflict that he couldn't get it. So they threw this movie out. I didn't realize Justin Lin directed this one.
Yeah.
Which surprised me because it's nowhere near as intense as the other ones are that he's done.
Yeah.
But this was also like, I get them not wanting to throw $200 million into the kind of like, oh, this is a placeholder movie and before he's proven himself with the franchise. Because eventually they just like basically wrote him blank checks to go write his movie or make his Fast movies.
And that's also Justin Lin is why. What's the dude that plays Han's name? Ken something. Anyway, that's why. That's why he's in this movie, and that's why it's Han centric, because he loves that dude, and they work together in Better Luck Tomorrow, which is the same Han and technically takes place inside of the Fast and Furious universe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
Better Luck Tomorrow is like Han's origin story, and then
I had no idea. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, and I think it takes place. So the continuity would be Better Luck Tomorrow, all of the Fast and Furious movies that Han is in before Tokyo Drift, and then Tokyo Drift.
Got it. So, yeah, it's weird. It's a weird timeline with this movie.
On top of the Fast and Furious shit, he's also a character from this other totally separate movie.
That's insane. I'm going to have to check that out.
We're going to have to make that part of our watching, because it's technically in the same universe.
Yeah, damn. If I knew that, I would have done that first.
I didn't know until now, yeah.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with this is, we're going to talk about continuity stuff later, so I'm not even going to bring this stuff up. So we'll bring it up at the end. But this movie, it feels like it doesn't matter, except for the fact that Han dies in it. Like, it doesn't really do anything.
But I was still kind of like invested in the story to a certain extent. And again, when I say this, I'm not talking about 5 stars. So again, I'm not trying to die on this hill, but just as its own little standalone movie, like I almost enjoyed this more than Too Fast, Too Furious. Oh,
that's funny. Like, it's entertaining enough, but I think this one also had almost no plot. Like, I found myself getting, like, like Han is such a great character and he's engaging.
Right.
I actually really liked Bow Wow. Yeah, and I also liked Bow Wow in this movie, but I felt like the main character, Sean,
black hole, dude.
Yeah, he has no charisma.
Yeah,
like,
and he's
zero
also
charisma.
He looks like he's fucking 40.
Yeah, he does, and he's only like 25. I looked it up. Like, he's only 25. Was that?
Came out in 2006, right?
Yeah.
He was born in 82. Oh yeah, sorry, 25. You're right.
24, 25, whatever.
I was thinking 21 for some reason, but you're right.
Yeah, so he was mid-20s, which is fine.
Yeah, but he doesn't look like it.
He doesn't look like it.
He's like an old 25. Like, he could be playing people in their 30s.
Absolutely, he could. And he just has no charisma whatsoever. Like, I didn't give a fuck about him. And he was kind of an asshole, but not in like a redeeming way.
And the whole movie revolves around 2 incidents where he's like just trying to impress a couple like basic ass chicks. And then he like ruins his life over one of them. And the whole movie happens because of the second one.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, stop racing for broads.
So basically, in a nutshell, this movie is exactly what Alex just said. We've got this guy who's from, I think he's supposed to be from Arkansas.
That's another thing that bothered me. He has like a really thick accent, and they don't, I mean, I guess like a movie doesn't have to explain everything, but it sticks out so much and they don't talk about it at all.
I think there was something, I can't remember. Like, I know he was born in like Arkansas, I think, wherever state, but I think there was something on a t-shirt or a backpack or his computer or something that said some state. It might have been Alabama, but one of the southern states is indirectly referenced.
It still pinged for me.
Yeah, but he is an asshole, and he destroys an entire construction like track home kind of set in a race. His mom seduces a cop so he doesn't get arrested. They send him to Japan to live with his dad, who he hasn't seen in years.
She did seduce the cop, didn't she?
She totally did.
Yeah.
And then
he goes
to Japan to see his like absentee father, and his father is like, hey, you're going to toe the line or you're out. And then we proceed to not see his father again for an hour and a half. He fucks up his life again over another girl racing.
It's exactly the same situation.
And then he has to like go to like the head of Yakuza to say, I want to challenge your nephew to a race to restore honor and balance to Tokyo. And like, that's the movie. Like, that's really boiling. It's oversimplifying it, but that really is it. And that's what I mean when like, there was no stakes to this. Like, when you look at the first 2, like if we just go through the movies we covered really fast, like there are stakes and there's an overarching plot with some importance to it. So the first movie, we got an LAPD officer working with the FBI undercover to bring down these really dangerous street racer / robbers. That's a compelling story.
Yeah.
Second movie same cop trying to erase his record and get back in the good graces of law enforcement by going undercover again to take down the cartel. Compelling story, pretty impressive stakes, not world-changing stakes like we get into like once we get into like the 5th, 6th, 7th movie, but still engaging stakes.
Yeah.
This movie, almost no stakes other than interpersonal stakes, like nothing for the city, nothing for the country, but whatever. 4th movie, bringing down a cartel again, pretty engaging. 5th movie, it's getting enough fucking money so we can go on the run and go somewhere that doesn't extradite, buying our freedom, and bringing the family back together.
Family.
Engaging. 6th movie, same thing. Like, we're stopping an international terrorist plot. This movie is just like some guy fucked up his life and continues to fuck it up.
Yeah, and, you know, not every... the argument against Marvel movies is that it doesn't have to be the end of the world every single fucking movie. But, sometimes you just want, like, some interpersonal stakes. But when you have a lead character that is a little brat and that you don't give a fuck about and is a black hole of charisma, then it's hard to have those interpersonal stakes. And
I agree.
Granted, I just said that I kind of enjoyed this and I like that it's a smaller movie. And I also said that I don't like the lead actor. But I don't know, somehow it still has some charm. I think that's Justin Lin, and I think it's the dude that plays Han, who I need to look up because
and Lil Bow Wow, I think, to an extent too. I think he was
to a very small
charming, which surprised me because I remember being really annoyed by him the previous times I watched this, but I actually found him charming and fun this time around. And like taking it to another, like I think this could have been a slam dunk movie, bringing it to another country, a completely different style of racing and car. So could have been really fun, and I just don't feel like they did enough with that. Like most of this movie is him learning how to drive.
I was actually... That's the thing that you've talked about in with the other movies, that like
the
Brian
lack of training.
Brian got super good all of a sudden. I was actually kind of impressed that with the montage scene in this movie, given the track record of these Fast and Furious movies. I think they actually did a good job, like showing that he doesn't know how to drive like this, and he actually learns how to, and it's a nice little montage.
I think but the thing is, it wasn't just a montage. It was like a good 15-20 minute scene of him learning how to do it.
Right.
And then he gets good enough that Han signs off on letting him run errands and doing some races. And then Han dies, and then it's another 15 to 20 minutes of him learning how to do it in his Mustang, where he put a like a
a Nissan engine.
I don't know what type of engine. Yeah, he put like a Nissan engine in a Mustang and tweaked it, which I think is fun, like merging East and West and whatnot. I think that's fun, but I wish they kind of leaned into that a little bit more and actually talked about like what they were doing. Like, I realize why I've never really been able to drift as well as I should be. Like, I'm a muscle car kind of guy, but this is a tuner kind of world, and I need to, like, I think that could have been a really cool kind of message, and like, but they just didn't really do that. Like, it could have been deeper, and it wasn't.
Yeah, it's not a movie that has a whole lot going on under the hood.
Heh. But nice. Getting to the
sorry, really quick. I was trying to look up Han, the actor that plays Han's name. He's not credited on IMDb for some reason.
Oh, that's weird.
Isn't that insane?
I always forget his name. I've looked it up several times, and I never remember his name. I feel really bad for not remembering his name, because I think he's great.
Yeah, he's fantastic. It actually makes me want to watch Better Luck Tomorrow. Sung Kang.
Yep, that's his name. Thank you.
Shout out to Sung Kang. Oh, no, let's start breaking down the movie. So my first note is that this whole movie is fucking dated, and it starts with the title sequence. Mm-hmm. Which I guess the second one kind of has a similar dated thing, but it feels very 90s, which we can get into at the end, but like, this movie is supposed to take place in the future. Like, it came out in 2009, and it's supposed to take place in
2006.
2006, and it's supposed to take place in what ends up being, I don't know, 2016 or something, 2015.
Well, so that's the thing that doesn't make sense. So the fifth movie is supposed to be 2006. So this movie came out in the year that the fifth movie was supposed to be. So realistically, if you take it by Jordana Brewster's line that it's been 5 years since the first movie in Fast and Furious in the fourth movie, and if you just go, okay, maybe it's been a couple of months since the fifth movie, when you go to the fifth movie, and then the baby. So realistically, you can say that the end of the sixth movie, because the baby's born, is probably about 6 years after the first movie.
We're getting into continuity discussion, and we said we wouldn't until we got through everything.
So that's just it. So to say, this movie took place in 2006 actually isn't unreasonable. Like, if it's towards the end of 2006.
Right. So a more accurate way is to say, the other movies where they have iPhones and shit took place in 2005 and 6.
Yeah, those ones don't really make sense. Exactly. So we'll talk about that deeper in a little bit.
That's all to say. There's a weird title sequence that feels very dated.
So
and
essentially
the opening sequence like feels like, even though it was shot in 2002, right? I keep on wanting to say 6 for some reason.
No, it came out in 2006, so this was probably
filmed I said
in
9. Okay, yeah. Jeez,
It's all good, bud.
I'm a real professional today. It looks like it was filmed in like 1999, and to that effect, fucking Kid Rock is on the soundtrack during this opening race.
That song came out in 98,
where he's doing the thing where he's like racing against the asshole jock, which is, a super 90s trope. And then the guy that plays the asshole jock is Homeboy from Home Improvement, which is a show that was, has not been on the air since 1993 or something.
And he was 25. He was a whole year younger. I looked it up and I was like, that's insane. He played like a high school student in another movie not too long before or after.
Do you hear that?
Yeah. Oh shit. That's our news alert.
Talk about the news.
That's a news alert. Oh shit. Zachary Ty Bryan. He was just arrested.
What?
Yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, he left his wife of almost 14 years for a younger woman. And
that's a long time.
Just got arrested for domestic abuse. Holy shit.
That's not really cool.
Dude, look at that mugshot. Jesus, he's not looking good.
Is that like
not okay, bud?
Yeah. Does his life take place inside of the Fast and Furious universe?
Oh my god, maybe.
Kind of feels like the
what
same
if he
guy.
was? Well, I mean, timeline doesn't match up, but maybe somebody will go to jail to visit another mob boss and see him behind bars.
I wonder if they can get him to play a teenager again in the next Fast and Furious. It makes about as much sense
in the past. Oh my god!
All these fucking guys are like 30 years old, and they're playing teenagers.
It's insane.
And I know that's a cliche and that's like a trope and shit. But in 2006, it's like well worn. I feel like by that point, it's like, hey, cast people that look their age, the age of the character.
That was a thing that we didn't really start getting until the 2010s. But it's just absurd to have somebody who is a child actor in the 90s playing a teenager in the mid 2000s.
He's supposed to be the same age as he was 10 years ago in the show.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Like, he's supposed to be 17 in this movie, and that's how old he was on Home Improvement, right?
Yeah,
he was the oldest one. Yeah,
he was the oldest.
Hey, doesn't he have like 3 first names?
So Zachary Ty Bryan.
Stupid. I don't respect a person with 3 first names. He's got 2.5 first names.
Yeah, well, he needed to compete with Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Well, at least Jonathan Taylor Thomas has 3 full first names. Zachary Ty Bryan is short for Tyler, I guess. He thought he could jazz it up.
I just want to look at his IMDb because I'm pretty sure
he's a douchebag.
Not too long before or after this, he was in like another movie where he's like a high school student. He was in Smallville in 2003, which would have put him in high school because he's in like high school for most of that series.
Right.
Jesus Christ.
Well, that's like what's his name, Joe Manganiello being Flash Thompson in Raimi's
in the first Spider-Man movie.
Like, you're huge, dude.
Yeah, it's insane.
You're huge, and you have a 5 o'clock shadow. Joe Manganiello runs. I just found out runs that Hollywood Dungeons and Dragons. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, dude, he's a super nerd.
That's so fucking cool.
Totally
man.
Cool. He will periodically do like Omay's charity events where you donate your money and then you could possibly win like a chance to hang out with him and play D&D with him.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's totally cool.
A funny thing I saw in that little video that was talking about his D&D thing was they're talking about the other like celebrities that are involved in that game, and he said that one of his friends got Tom Morello involved, which is super cool, but then Tom Morello is friends with Vince Vaughn, and he got Vince Vaughn in, and I was like, Tom Morello and Vince Vaughn are friends? I want to hear more about that.
That's weird.
Right? Because Vince Vaughn is like
uber conservative gun nut.
I don't even want to say he's uber conservative, but he's known for being one of the that's probably not even accurate, one of the out conservative or right-leaning celebrities in liberal Hollywood, liberal pedophile Hollywood.
No, he definitely is.
And Tom Morello obviously is like famously super left-wing. So I just wonder what their like conversations are like.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is pretty crazy. Wow.
Anyway,
Tom Morello like tweeted at somebody. It was Paul Ryan. Like mentioned, he was a big Rage Against the Machine fan, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Do you not understand what this music's about?"
Well, somebody like earlier in pandemic was like, "Hey, Tom Morello, stop tweeting your political opinions. You're making me not want to listen to your music or something." He's like, "Hey, man, what do you think any of these songs are about?"
Yeah, dude, it's insane. Fucking idiots.
Anyway,
back to the movie.
Not a lot of teens in this movie.
Yeah. So the
Dare I
beginning of
say
this
none?
movie is you just see, like you mentioned, this like dated 90s thing. This would have made sense if it came out right after Columbine, in that like you see all the teenagers going through metal detectors and you see security cameras, and it's just making it look like America is the worst fucking place to live in the world.
Yeah.
And like it would have made sense if there was some commentary about like Eastern and Western philosophy on education or anything, but none of this ties into anything. It's super like heavy-handed, but it doesn't have any payoffs for anything.
Yeah.
So immediately we just see him go through, that's the opening sequence, going in through high school and everything. We see him watching like this fat nerdy kid getting bullied in auto shop. People are like painting his belly and he does nothing.
I think
So
that
it's
was
just,
Ned
like,
from Spider-Man.
Was that?
I think it was Ned from Spider-Man.
I don't think it was,
No, it
but
definitely wasn't. I'm kidding.
but like you just see like it doesn't make you think this character is anybody you want to relate to, because he just like he's supposed to be the hero of the movie and he's just watching some kid get bullied by two people,
Well, it's the beginning of the movie. That's the beginning of his arc.
which is
I
okay,
guess.
but still like you would think like the way he looks, I'm thinking like he's gonna pull like he has a wrench, so I'm thinking like he's gonna go up and scare the guys with the wrench, and he does nothing. And then like, it's the end of the day, he's in the parking lot, he's getting into his like Buick Skylark. I don't know what car it actually was, but it was like something along those lines. And he sees like the hot chick sitting in her car, and
She
she's like,
flashes him a little puss, dude.
yeah, she like smiles at him, and he's like, "Oh, you're admiring."
She fully
my
gives him an
ride."
upskirt shot.
Yeah, it's weird. And then like Zachary Ty Thompson or Brian or whatever the fuck his name is. I don't even care. He's in the bin. He's a domestic abuser. I don't respect him.
John, Robert, Billy, Mike.
But he's just like, "Are you talking to my girl?" And he's like, "Nah, she was just admiring my ride." And then he's like, "Your ride, I have a Viper, and it does 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds." And it's the same line that Dom said to Ludacris said to Hobbs in the last movie. It was like, "Oh, you read the brochure." And then they go back and forth trying to be all macho. They're like, "Cool, let's race." And he's like, "I only race for pink slips." And the bully guy's like, "Why the fuck would I want your pink slip?" And then the girl's like, "Well, race for me then."
Dude, get some fucking self-respect, girl. God damn.
Yeah, it's absurd. Oh shit.
Mike's phone just fell.
So they go to this like construction site where like, God damn it.
I did it again. I felt like I'm
It's
on a
because
roller coaster.
I got a new setup. I got like all new monitors, so normally I just prop my phone up on the monitors, but it's too big. Anyway,
I get that a lot.
all right, they decide to go through this like construction site full of houses that are like down to just the studs. And what was weird about this race is like the whole time there's like this like pickup truck like recording the race, and like it's staying in front of a Viper, and this guy's like souped up like shitty car, and it's like, how is this a race where like the bystanders are actually faster than the actual races?
Yeah, and also all the bystanders, quote unquote, are the guy's friends, and they're keeping our hero from being able to really compete in
Get
the race.
ahead.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, so-
totally unfair.
Yeah, so that happens. That it gets to the point where they end up having to do like he takes shortcuts. He ends up destroying several houses by driving through the houses. Once, for
And they're like
whatever reason,
they're just like studs, but yeah.
yeah, but still, he's destroying houses.
Yeah.
That people presumably will be purchasing soon. Throughout the race, you see like the girlfriend is in the car with Zachary Ty Bryson or Brian or whatever the fuck his name is, and she's like, "I thought you loved me," and like starts smiling at our hero. They both end up crashing. Like the bully ends up crashing into like a cement pipe. And then our hero, quote unquote, wins the race but can't stop. So he like spins out and flips.
And almost kills a bunch of people.
Yeah, almost kills a bunch of people. They end
It was
up.
like, it was like a horrific accident.
No,
that,
it's terrible.
They wrapped
that
the
both
Viper.
walk through.
Yeah,
Like-
walk out of. Yeah, they
Yeah,
wrapped
they
that
should.
Viper around. You said a cement pipe, but like it's a giant pipe that's going to be underground, and they drive straight into the side of it and just completely
dude.
wrap the Viper around it.
It's insane. They are all lucky to be alive.
And the bystanders too.
Yeah, so they end up at the police station. The cop was just like, "Look, dude, that guy's rich. She's rich. The parents already paid their way out of this. Like, somebody needs to go down. You're gonna go down." And so, like, his mom just like walks into the interrogation room and she starts flirting with the cop, like, "Can I smoke?" And there's like all these signs that say no smoking. The cop's like, yeah, go ahead. And she's like, surely we can come to some sort of arrangement. And then it fades to black.
Yeah.
And he's like waiting out in the lobby, and he sees his mom. He's like, so where are we moving now? She's like, you're moving to Japan, bitch.
Because his dad, who is currently in the Navy or was in the Navy, is out there.
He's like an expat of some kind.
I
don't know what his deal is.
There's a scene later in the movie where his dad comes home wearing his uniform, or is walking out with his uniform or something.
He's just walking out in a shirt that says Navy.
No, he wears his uniform at some point in the movie.
Oh, did he? I completely blanked on when we meet his dad. So
a chick is sucking his dick. There's a lot of dick sucking in this movie.
Yeah, he's like straight up with prostitutes. So like Sean shows up, and like his dad's not at the airport, so he ends up taking a cab. He gets to his dad's house and he knocks on the door, and the dad's like, dude, you're supposed to be on the 7th. And he's like, it is the 7th. And he goes, yeah, but Japan is a day ahead. But it's like, dude, were you not there? Like, why did you not call? Like, the dad clearly doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And then like, as he's talking, like this prostitute like walks out, like pulling down her shirt and everything. It's like,
her like
this is weird.
Yeah, her like lips are all irritated and the back of her hair is like matted and sticking up and shit.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. And then like he shows up at school, he doesn't understand. He gets yelled at.
His dad doesn't even like help him get to school. He doesn't speak the language.
No, his dad.
He's just like, hey, train leaves at 7. Train leaves at 7. Have fun making your way through the city where you don't know anything.
Never been to.
You can't understand anything that's going on.
You're from the American South. You're probably a bigot. You're not going to take the time to learn anything about this new culture. So I'm just going to let you sink. Was that?
He doesn't have the time to. He's there in 24 hours.
Yeah. So he's like, he just sends his son from the deep South to like this new country where he doesn't know anything. Teacher yells at him in Japanese before he figures out that he's not supposed to wear shoes.
Yeah.
We meet Lil Bow Wow, whose name is Twinkie.
And his car is simultaneously the Hulk, but also being punched from the inside by the Hulk.
Yeah, it's weird. It's fun though. I really liked the excitement that Bow Wow had as he goes through. But like the only like parenting thing the dad does is like, you go to school, you come back, and don't you ever get in a car. If you're in a car, I'm sending you back to the States, and you're going to jail.
Which he immediately does.
Yeah, he never follows up with this. So like his first day of school, Lil Bow was like, oh, you're an army brat. Let me sell you a laptop. And the guy's like, dude, I have no money. Oh, let me sell you an iPod. I have no money. Let me sell you some shoes. I have no money. Like, he's basically like caretaker from The Longest Yard. It's almost like every prison movie.
He's Red.
Yeah, exactly. He's like every prison movie has that guy who can get you access to whatever.
This is another weird thing, by the way. You mentioned the prison thing. Or not prison. Oh my God. You mentioned the military brat thing. And they say that a few times. Like, basically, any character that's not Japanese in this movie is called a military brat by someone else at some point. But it's a confusing thing to, like, they don't need to bring it up as much as they do. And then his dad is in the military, but he's not a military brat. Yeah. So it just seems like unnecessarily, I don't know, confusing is the wrong word. But
well, then it turns out
it makes your ears perk up. Like, why is everyone a military brat except for him? Why are we talking about it this much?
Yeah, so, like, Bow Wow is a military brat. He says he was. Technically, our hero is because he's there specifically because his dad is in the military. So, like, you can argue that our main character is, but then our main character goes up to, like, the British girl who's, like, the love interest of the movie. And he's like, oh, you're an army brat. Is she Australian?
Yeah.
Okay. The Australian actress.
She's Australian in the movie. She says she's Australian.
Oh, did she? I missed it. What was her name? The character's name?
No idea.
My notes. Neela or something like that.
It's a dumb name. It's made up.
So
almost
he's
as bad
like,
as Zachary Bryan.
he calls her an army brat, and she's like, I'm not an army brat. Like, my family died, and I got adopted by, like, the Yakuza's person. Like, I got adopted by, like, a DK's aunt and everything. So it's like,
DK is the bad guy in the movie.
Yeah, we never, like, we hear his actual name once, but DK stands for Drift King. So, like, immediately after befriending Lil Bow Wow, he goes to a race, like a drift race, and is like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to challenge the toughest guy to a race, even though he has no car. And, like, the DK is like, dude, you don't even have a car. Shut the fuck up. And then we see Han, and Han's like, dude, you can take my car. And, like, he proceeds to fuck up the car. He's never drifted. He doesn't understand it.
And they're in like a parking garage, so it's all super narrow turns, and they're going uphill. And the whole point of this race is that they're drifting around all of these corners, and he has no idea how to do it. So he's never done it. He's slamming into all these walls, almost killing bystanders again. and hitting other cars.
Destroying other people's cars. Not only the car he was driving, but he crashed into other people's cars who weren't even racing.
And he doesn't even seem to give a shit.
He doesn't give a fuck at all. And like he gets out of the car and...
Which, sorry, I'm interrupting you again. That would be interesting if that was the focus of this movie, how he's like reckless and always feels like he needs to prove himself to the toughest guy in the room, blah, blah, blah. Like there's interesting pathos there, but that's not what this movie's about.
Right. Like if they pulled like a Marty McFly in the second and third movie, like, you know, he needs to learn that it's okay to back down from a fight. Like, but it doesn't. Like it's
and Lucas Black isn't a good enough actor to carry that like subtle gravitas that you just feel in that character, even though the movie's not about it. So it's just like
exactly, and
not
that's
there at all. But you feel
it drives me crazy that now, granted, these movies aren't deep, but it seems like every other movie has that like a little bit of some sort of tone or a message, like. Whether it's about family or finding out who you really are, like it never really comes through with this guy.
Yeah.
So basically the movie ends up becoming for a good 45 minutes to an hour, like Han being like, you work for me now, like you do whatever I tell you. And in between him doing jobs for Han, he's supposed to be learning how to drift. And we get like 4 montages of him learning how to drift. Like Han is just like, yeah, destroy any car you want, get as many tires as you want. And Bow Wow's like, dude, this is fucking stupid. Like Bow Wow is the voice of reason in this movie.
Han's whole thing about that too is like, he's like, why did you give me that car if you knew I couldn't drift? And Han was like, you know, $40,000 car is a small price to pay for finding somebody with morals or whatever, and I want to surround myself with good people and this and that.
And it's like, but he didn't. That race didn't do that. That just shows that he's like a short-sighted asshole.
Yeah, shows that he's reckless and doesn't care about other people's property. Also, that's not a good way to do that. You know,
I get what it's trying to do. Like,
if what I assumed it was that Han was like, I'm gonna convince this guy to destroy my car so that he owes me money and then he's under my thumb. So basically I have a free employee.
Right. That would make sense.
That makes more sense to me.
That would make more sense. But then like, because we've watched these other movies and like the 4th and 5th and 6th movie really talk about like, oh, you know, the spirit of the street racer. And like, especially with the 6th movie when Dom and Letty are talking about how like, you can tell what kind of person they are by driving. And even though you have amnesia, you drive exactly the same. So you're the same person. So it's like you almost want to believe that Han has that same mentality. Like, I just want to see how you are behind the wheel and how you and everything. And like you can see like, okay, this guy didn't give up and he really wanted to learn. So it's like, sure, there are some redeeming qualities in that he's quote unquote maybe brave and he doesn't give up, you know, but he clearly has no... He's a teenager. Like his brain isn't fully developed yet. Yeah. This is not somebody you want to be your number 2 right-hand man.
He's a teenager who looks like a 30-year-old who looks even older.
Clearly has
because we see him
disorder.
We see him in Fast and Furious 7, right?
7. Yeah, and he's even older, and it's super fucking weird.
10 years have passed.
Yeah, it's fucking weird. So
10 years have passed in the real world, but in the Fast and Furious world, it's
been minutes.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same day. It's the next moment.
So he throughout this several montages of him learning how to drive, we find out that Han is working with DK. DK is the nephew of like a Yakuza Don, and we find out that
played
Han
by Sonny Chiba.
Yeah, so Han is skimming off the top and not giving DK and his uncle the share that he's supposed to. He's like cooking the books to make it look like he's making a little less than he actually is.
Yeah.
And so it all comes to a head. DK shows up at Han's place and fucks things up. They go out on this like crazy street race where there's this point. It's probably the stupidest thing in all the Fast and the Furious movies so far, but there's a point where Tokyo, which is one of the most densely populated places in the world, they're going through it and there's this like pedestrian crosswalk that conservatively has 2 million people in it, conservatively. And Sean's in the car with Neela, and she's like, shit, there's hella fucking people, conservatively 2 million people in the crosswalk, what are you gonna do?
They're
And
going
Sean
at
just
least
like,
80 miles an hour.
yeah, Sean's like, I've got this, and he just starts honking on the horn, and then he's just like drifting and honking at the same time, and it's just like the parting of the Red Sea. Like all these 2 million Japanese people are slowly getting out of the way.
They part perfectly. Yeah, they part perfectly as if they are a hive mind.
Yeah, it's almost like a zipper coming undone. Like just perfect sync. They drift right through.
It looks
Han
cool,
gets
but
killed.
it's absurd.
Yeah, Han gets killed. In this, it just looks like somebody hit him. We find out later that's Jason Statham. And then we just show up. Sean's back at his dad's house, and his dad's like, dude, we need to get you the fuck out of here. And he's like, I can't go. I made a mistake. I need to own up to my own mistakes and make it right. And the dad's
this is my favorite part of the movie.
And the dad's like, oh, okay, cool. And then just leaves and lets his high school son go to the Yakuza to challenge the Yakuza's nephew to a street race to, like, restore honor and balance to Tokyo.
The way that he says it to his dad, what he says to his dad is, I gotta do this. Can you understand that? What? You're 17 years old and you've been expatriated from the United States because you almost killed a bunch of people. And now you want to get into a car and drift over to the Yakuzas and ask them to restore balance and honor, which you know nothing about, by getting into another race? What are you talking about? You're going to prison. I'm sending you home and your mother's going to deal with you. I don't even love you. I abandoned you. And now you've come into my life and interrupted my whore fucking. You're turning my tiny little apartment into bedlam. Get out of here.
Well, what's funny is, like, so we don't really know how long this movie stretches, but, like, we never see him and the dad interacting. There's a few times where he, like, calls the phone. He's like, hey, Dad, I'm not coming home. I just have extracurricular activities.
He moves out at some point.
Yeah. See, it's not I have band or I joined a football team or I don't fucking speak Japanese, so I'm getting tutored. Like, that's the thing you say. But no, he's just like, I'm not coming home because I have extracurricular activities, even though the dad said, you come home, there's nothing you're allowed to do. And the dad's like, oh, okay. And then halfway through the movie, like, Bow Wow's just like, hey, Han, like, Sean's here and he's got a bag. And he's like, oh, go get him a bunk bed in my little warehouse. Like, he'll join my little commune. It's super weird.
That's ridiculous.
So anyway, he challenges, he shows up at the Yakuza without an appointment. And it's just like, hey, Yakuza guy, your son is an asshole, I'm an asshole, or your nephew's an asshole, I'm an asshole, but I think if we street race, like, everything will be good.
Yeah.
And the uncle's like, that's a really great idea, which makes no sense. And so, like, he challenges DK to a race, and it's, like, down this mountain that apparently only DK has ever gotten down. We have another, like, 20-minute montage of them taking this Mustang and him drifting and spinning out, and then them tweaking some things and him spinning out. And then, like, all of a sudden, we just see the Mustang completely painted, and they're like, it's done. It's ready. Yeah. He goes down this race. He defeats DK, and then it's just like, he's the new DK. The movie ends, like, you think it's all done, and then Bow Wow's like, hey, bud, like, there's somebody who wants to race you. And DK, he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm the white guy who's DK. I'm not going to, like, risk losing my title. And Bow Wow's like, dude, he knows Han. And then we see Vin Diesel. And he's like, we get this. I think this is where we can transition a little bit into continuity. Because Bow Wow's like, yeah, you know, this guy who says he knows Han, he's been, like, tearing up all the races in Tokyo and Japan, and now he wants to challenge you. And this is another part where the continuity makes no sense. So maybe the very end of the movie, after he's DK, has been a few weeks, maybe it's been a month, who knows how long it's been after Han died. But when you go into the 7th movie and we find out that Han died, there's a scene that takes place right here where Vin Diesel's character Dom and Sean talk about, like, what happened. He's like, hey, tell me about the night that Han died. You're telling me that Han died, and we haven't watched the 7th movie, so this is a little bit of a spoiler for the 7th movie, but there's a point where like a bomb blows up Dom's house as well after he talks on the phone to Deckard Shaw. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, one of your best friends got killed. Your house just got blown up. So you're going to take a trip to Japan and spend a few weeks racing and developing street cred? You're not just going to, like...
They even say that he's been working his way across Asia or something.
Yeah.
Racing, right?
And so, like, that makes sense in the context of 2006 before we had any of the other movies. But it fundamentally, if they didn't just completely retcon this movie, which they didn't, they, like, folded this in and took scenes from this movie and put them in future movies. So you can't even say this movie doesn't count. We're led to believe that Vin Diesel took at least a few weeks to a few months to, like, build up a rapport with the Asian street racer so he can get to DK, where in the previous movies, in both the one where they're in Brazil and when they're in London.
This is Brazil.
And like, this is London. Like, he just immediately shows up to places and is already like, everyone's like, we're willing to go to jail for this guy.
Yeah.
So it's a little absurd that Vin Diesel like shows up and like for a cameo, and then they make the cameo this like super important thing 4 movies later.
Yeah.
It fundamentally breaks apart. That being said, the 7th movie, I'm very, very much looking forward to watching because there's some good stuff in that.
I'm excited to watch it too. I want to talk about continuity a little bit more, but there's a couple, there's a couple quick notes that I want to get to before that. At some point in this movie, Han and what's his name, the main guy, Lucas Black, Han and Sean go talk to DK, and then Han like sends Sean away, and then Han and DK play cards together, so like they have their own conversation. But they're speaking English to each other.
Yeah, why would
like,
they do that?
Yeah, like there's nobody else around. They're in Japan, assuming these guys both, like they're only speaking English to Sean because he's there. So that was weird. And then
maybe Han doesn't speak Japanese.
Maybe
because he's not Japanese, he's Korean.
Right. But it still seems he lives there. Like he deals with these people all the time.
You think he would have picked some up?
Yeah. I think he speaks it fluently. I don't think it's a stretch to say that. Anyway.
And it's just weird. Like, once again, we don't really know. So maybe Fast and the Furious 7 takes place years after 6. I don't know. Like, I'd have to see the age of the baby, which we see in Fast and the Furious. So maybe it's been a couple of years, and the continuity isn't as fucked as it seems. But we'll figure it out. I don't know. One
more funny thing about this movie before we get to continuity is Han's like training grounds where he brings Sean to learn how to drift is like a port next to the ocean, I guess, next to some water. And there's a couple old fishermen, and they cut to them a couple times for comic relief, just to be like, this kid sucks at drifting. And then later on, they're like, wow, he's getting pretty good at drifting. We're old fishermen. Why do we know about this thing?
Well, on another note, similar to that, I'll let you finish, but then I've got something similar to that, actually.
I was just going to say it's funny because they reminded me of the groundskeepers in Major League.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's got to be like a little wink to that.
Yeah, maybe. Or like the old guys from the Muppets.
Yeah, exactly.
But along the same line, so when they're going between the different montages, there's a point where they're drifting down a mountain when Han's trying to teach him, and he's like, there's no wax on, wax off to this. Like, you learn by doing. So like they just keep putting him in a car and letting him practice. Like, they don't give him any instruction, and they like people are all annoyed that he's not good at it. It's like nobody's teaching him anything. They're just letting him destroy shit.
Lil Bow Wow tries to tell him to pull the e-brake, and then he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, never mind, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. So
also, one more thing. They keep on telling us how good this girl is at racing, and they never give her an opportunity to do it. She drives once in the movie. They even
comment on it. He's like, when am I going to see you drift? Like, how come I've never seen you? She's like, you never asked. But then, we never actually see her drive.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Stupid.
But another thing with the Han dynamic, which it's fun, like it's a fun character trait and everything. It kind of makes sense, like that he would be like this. It's almost like 007. Like in the Casino Royale, he really loved Vesper, but then she died, and that's what caused him to be like the womanizer who doesn't give a shit about women and just like fucks everyone. In this, like Han is all about getting his dick wet. So like, there's a point in the movie where Sean is like out on his own with Han, and they just race the cops, and the cops are like, just let him go. And he learns that if you race fast enough, the cops will leave you alone because they have like stock cars. And so Sean says, hey, how come you don't race? Why don't you drift? And Han's like, dude, what's the point of a race? And Sean's like, to show that you're better. And he goes, no, it just shows that you have a faster car. Like, that doesn't mean you're a better person or you're better than this person. So if I'm going to race somebody, it needs to be for something that matters.
Yeah.
And Sean's like, well, what matters to you? And he's like, I'll show you. And then like they come up on this like red light with like 2 hot Japanese girls, and like Han just like does donuts around these hot chicks, and then just kind of like drifts by them, and they like hand their phone number out the window, and he catches it. So it's like he's trying to act like there's this like he's deeper and has this really deep connection to his car, and he only races for things that matters. But no,
he just wants grief pussy.
Yeah, he just drifts for pussy. That's what I wrote. He drifts for pussy.
Grief
it's
pussy.
Fucking weird.
Specifically grief pussy.
Yeah, weird.
Well, you got Wonder Woman and you're in love with her, and then she falls off a plane, and what else are you gonna do?
Makes sense. Like, I'm totally on board with him just being a womanizer because he just lost the love of his life. I think that's fine. That's clearly not what the case was when they wrote this movie, because Giselle wasn't even a thing. But
Right.
as a retcon, I kind of like it. Like, if this was a planned thing, I kind of like that. It's weird that he like paints himself as like this deep person, and he only races for things that matter and what's important. And then he goes and does this, and it's like, oh, so you are only racing to get hot chicks. You're not deep at all.
Let's transition back into continuity and I want to bring this up, and then we can move into the continuity. How much of this franchise do you think was planned at this point?
Almost none.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
Yeah, I don't think they did any of this. I think even now, I think they're starting to plan more, since they had 9, and then they said that 10 and 11 were going to be filmed together. There was a point where 6 and 7 were supposed to be filmed together. So I think they're getting better at having like
6 and 7 were conceived together.
Yeah, I think they have an outline, but I don't think they necessarily have
certainly
like a blueprint.
Yeah, certainly at the point of Tokyo Drift, where they were like, "Oh, we're going to do another movie. Oh, Vin and what's his face aren't involved. Okay, well, I guess it'll be standalone. We'll just figure it out."
Well, then the 4th movie didn't seem like they really knew exactly what they wanted to do, because they killed a character just to bring her back in 2 movies. Like, they clearly didn't know what they wanted to do for the 4th and the 5th movie either.
Yeah, and I think that they only brought Han back because he was such a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, he was a cool character. I was glad when he came back.
Yeah, me too. But it completely breaks the continuity of these movies.
Oh, it completely breaks it. And then, like, we know he's coming back again, which is even weirder.
Yeah, and it's like definitely him. It's not like a cyborg or something.
So
which they have in these movies now.
Yeah, when you get into Hobbs and Shaw. Well, there's a point in like Hobbs and Shaw where we didn't, like, there's a bad guy that we don't meet, and we just get a voice at the end, but it's like digitized. A lot of people thought it was going to be Han because there were whispers that he was coming back in 9. A lot of other people thought it might be Keanu Reeves because they're constantly trying to get like bigger and better names to come. So we eventually get like Helen Mirren, and of course we get Jason Statham, and we get Charlize Theron. So we start getting all these big names. So a lot of people thought in Hobbs and Shaw we were going to get a reveal that Keanu Reeves was coming, and like I don't remember where I read it, but somewhere I read something that they actually did have conversations with Keanu, so that a lot of people thought it was going to be Keanu or Han at the end of Hobbs and Shaw, which now that we have Han coming back, maybe it is. We don't really know. So I'm really interested to see what happens with 9.
There's no indication that Han is like evil though. He comes in and he's just, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And he's eating his fucking chips again. Yeah. And I don't want them to make him evil because they've done want him to be like 3 times already.
I hope not. He's the coolest. He's my favorite. Him and Tej are my favorite characters. So I really hope he's on the good side.
They've also had Letty, Dom turn evil, and then Dom has like an evil older brother in 9, or a younger brother, which is its own thing. We can talk about that in the next episode. But like they've already gone to the well of making good characters evil for a minute. Yeah, I don't need Han to do that.
Nope. Neither.
So I think the main thing that bugs me about the continuity of these movies, I like the idea of this being a secret future quel, but I just don't think that it's possible to do that when you have 10 years of these movies in between.
And they use when it's supposed to match technology in each movie.
Yeah, exactly. And like specifically to this point, at the climax of this movie, they're doing this race, and
they've got flip phones that they're filming it on.
And it's already ridiculous. Like, how are they watching in 2006? How are they live streaming these videos of people from further down the mountain or whatever, or up the mountain, down the mountain, and these people are watching them? You know what I mean? Like they're essentially watching Twitch feeds.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Which is like, like Twitch wasn't a website, and technology wasn't good enough at that point.
In 2006, that's the year I graduated high school. I had one of the best flip phones at the time because they weren't even like, this was even like the I can't even remember what they're called, like the Voyagers from LG that had internet. Like these are just straight 2 megapixel at best cameras.
Yeah.
Like, come on. You're not getting that quality. But
yeah, and they're all watching like this streaming video of these guys racing. And they should have iPhones. Like, it's so obviously set in 2006, and that's fine, but how are you going to try and convince me that it takes place in the future?
Yeah. And all I can say is getting into continuity is...
Sorry, or let me just say this, or that these other movies, that the other 4 movies in between took place before this, because then you would have to go to Fast and Furious 4 through 7 and make sure that everyone's using technology from the early 2000s then.
Yeah, so the only thing I can say that can kind of clear this up a little bit is we do get that one line from Jordana Brewster in the fourth movie that says, basically when Brian shows up again, she's like, you've been gone for 5 years and like you fucked up my entire family and now you're back. Okay, so we can say the fourth movie is 5 years, and that's still before this one. So you go, in the fifth movie, she's pregnant. In the sixth movie, at the very beginning, she has the baby. So that's presumably another 9 months. So you can say the sixth movie, because we could say maybe the fifth movie takes place over a couple of months after the prison break to them getting to Brazil and planning that stuff. So maybe that's a couple of months. So maybe between the fourth movie and the end of the sixth movie, it's been a full year. So we're now at 6 years. You know, maybe the timeline can kind of make sense when you factor that in, but still the technology part is never going to line up. Because even in the fourth movie, they were using like GPS.
Literally, the movies, the 4 through 6, used like the MacGuffins of the MacGuffins of the movie, like the things that set the plot in motion and that the characters are chasing, are pieces of technology that didn't exist in 2006.
Right. Like the GPS units in 2006 were external units, not built in. Like you could possibly get that, but that's not something a street racer is putting in their car, a GPS unit. A state of the art. Yeah, they don't need it. That's extra weight. That's not something they're going to be putting in. So that's the thing that really breaks it is the technology used.
And then also you're trying to tell me that all the movies after Fast and Furious 6 take place in 2006?
Yeah. And that's where the only thing you can maybe justify is saying, once again, because 6 takes place, maybe it's 2007. It's been a full year. And then I don't remember how old the kid is in 7, but I know the beginning of 7 shows like Paul Walker in a minivan dropping off his kid at school. Now, I don't know if it's preschool or kindergarten or what. Now, maybe if this kid is 5 years old in 7, well, we're now pushing this to 2010 for the 7th movie, and it starts to get a little bit more realistic. It's still maybe a little bit too much future proof, but that's when we also start getting like Mr. Nobody, and we start getting the God's Eye and satellite stuff. So
I mean, not even technology wise. Like I'm in the theater. What year did 7 come out?
7 came out in like 2014, I think.
Oh, I can see you again. So in 2014, I'm sitting in the theater watching this movie that looks like it takes place in 2014, but then the movie wants to be like, by the way, they're avenging the death of their friend 3 months ago.
Furious 7 was 2015.
Yeah, so I'm sitting in the theater in 2015 watching these people in this movie when it looks like it's 2015, and then the movie doesn't say this, but it should. Hey, this movie takes place in 2007. Han just died. It's that was 2006. Now it's maybe 2007. You're in 2015, but remember that we're in 2007. Like,
right?
Why? I'm clearly in 2015.
Is it's not a stretch. Depending on I think we'll talk about this when we watch 7, but it really depends on how old Paul Walker and Jordana Brewster's son is in the next movie. Because then we can maybe
that shit doesn't even matter at all anyway. Because the Rock's kid is at one age in Fast and Furious 7, and then in Hobbs and Shaw, she's like, there's a 5-year difference.
Yeah, but you know what? We don't know. The Hobbs and Shaw one's kind of a standalone one too. We don't. That could, in theory, be a couple of years in the future as well. We don't know. So we'll take it as we go and try to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, we can revisit this when we watch it. But like Hobbs and Shaw's relationship doesn't exist in a vacuum. Like they're not pals in this movie because of what happened in 6 and 7.
Yeah, but maybe it'd been a couple years. We'll figure it out. We'll watch the rest and we'll try to figure it out. And we'll do a little bit more research. I think by the time we get to Hobbs and Shaw, we'll try to break it down and figure out what the fuck is going on.
All right, maybe we can come up with like a sweet flow chart for our Instagram.
All right. Well, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you? Do your plugs, bud.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Dysalexic, selling my wares. I've got some cool new shirts on there that you can get in time for Halloween. I'm on Twitter at Polishi, my last name, and you can find me on Letterboxd at Polishi as well. Follow along with what I'm watching.
You can check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/MDXpods. We've talked about it in the past. These bonus episodes will be going towards Patreon once we get through the Fast franchise. We're still going to try to come out with something to have weekly releases on the free feed. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but we've got a few more weeks of these movies before we have to figure that out. Check out our other podcast, Ruin My Childhood, with my wife and I. We're also going to be coming up with some bonus content for that shortly for the Patreon as well. But feel free to check out that podcast. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.